This show is proudly brought to you by the #Me Network. Access granted.
Kia ora, and thanks so much for tuning into Access Granted, our weekly tech and media podcast. I'm Raj, my background's in media design, film and technology.
And I'm Mike, and my background is information wrangling, connecting people and getting things done.
And you're here because you're a Kiwi that has a great passion for tech and media in New Zealand. Today I wanted to focus on one of Mike's stories about change management. We've been speaking about this in the last few weeks, and he highlighted the fact that people can find it hard to change the way they do work or they work within organisations, and there can be pushback. So over to you, Mike.
I'll tell you a story about changing, and the title of the story is called Fuck Off Money. We'll either leave this in or we won't. It was told me a friend of mine who used to work, he was a young techie guy, this is back in the 80s, whenever the stock exchange happened here.
87.
Prior to that. And there used to be big green screens and tap, you know. Who's old?
My uncle used to do that, yeah.
Yeah, so, and his job was to go and put in these things called PCs. So he'd gone these IBM compatible PCs. So he went round and he put them all in. And there was a guy in an office much like this, but leather chairs, and he'd sit on his green thing and tap. And every time he'd come in, he was just a young the guy would go, "Nah, go away. Go away." So he did that everybody else, and he finally came back and said, and tried to explain that the same thing you're looking there is on here, but there's more, but you can just, it would look the same. Go away. So he went to the CIO, his boss, who finally went up to the boss, and it wasn't called CIO, the IT manager, I suspect it was called, the computer manager, who went in and say his name was John. "Go on, John, you've got to change it." And he said, "No, fuck off." He said, "That thing there, that's how I get all my money. That's how that's how I pay for my kids' food and put the house and everything, that's it there. And you want to take that away from me?" He said, "How much is that worth? That newfangled thing that you're programming in?" And he said, $3,000 or $10,000 or whatever it was in those days for a PC. He wrote him a check and he said, "Fuck off." And he left him alone.
So yeah, change management, you got to think about it from all angles. Next up is our interview with Ian Apperley. Ian's a freelance writer and he's an ICT professional, of course. Writes for the National Business Review and a few other publications. His work is basically around strategic planning, particularly around new technology such as the cloud. Enjoy.
So here we are in another bar, but this time
Studio 3, isn't it?
Studio 3 out here in Miramar. We're at the, I forgot what it's called, it's Gasworks. And we're out here in Miramar because we're meeting a peninsular...
Miramartian?
What's the word I'm looking for? Personality. Definitely a peninsular personality. Ian Apperley. Now, if you haven't heard of Ian Apperley, then you're not Googling it right.
And not listening to the show, because we mentioned him earlier on. First few episodes.
Yes. So, Ian, before we crack into who you are and what you do, our first question is always, what makes you happy?
What makes me happy? That's a good question. Lots of things make me happy. Wellington makes me happy. I think it's an insane city on the edge of the world that is unbelievably elemental. There's nothing boring or average about Wellington. It's either blowing 100 degrees in one direction or 100 in the other. And it's just full of crazy people and lots of good beer. So Wellington definitely makes me happy.
Fantastic answer. And quite possibly the best answer, of course, because we are here in Wellington. So I first actually met you, as in person I saw you, you were on stage at NetHui.
Oh, yeah.
That was 2 years ago, maybe?
Yeah.
Yep, and that was yourself and a few other people talking about cybersecurity. That was it, wasn't it? Privacy. And I remember thinking, that's the guy who does the smart cities stuff online. And you just sort of appeared online, and that's not true. What is the history of where you came from and then smart cities, and how did I get to see you standing on NetHui stage talking about cybersecurity?
I've been writing forever, so 20 plus years. I think my first thing that I wrote that was published was in the Dominion Post when I was 13.
Wow.
Yeah, so we're going back a fair old way. And writing is what I like to do, and technology is the other side of what interests me. So
was that first one about tech?
no.
It wasn't just a public notice or something, was it?
We're all interested. What was it? Come on.
Robertside College at the time was going through a hideous scrap with what's now the ERO, the Education Review Office, for having really shoddy teachers and outcomes. And so I had written and said, yep, you know what, they're absolutely right. Some of these teachers are rubbish.
And from there it all
kind of spawned. So in terms of the most recent burst of writing has been over the last 3 years, a couple of blogs, syndicated to various places. Yeah.
And then tech? How did you
Tech. So the history of tech's pretty simple. The family moved up to Gisborne when I was in the fifth form. The old man took a job up there as a civil engineer the same month that Bowler arrived and wiped out pretty much all of the infrastructure in the city. And so after school I took a gap year by accident. I smoked a gigantic amount of marijuana and went surfing. And then after the year I figured, well, I probably should do something. And on the radio they advertised an IT course at the local Polytech. So I signed up, and the rest is kind of history. And that was 24 years ago.
And on which side of tech, I suppose, did you go into, and where are you now?
I started as a developer, which I did for a couple of years. And by the end of that, I hated it with a passion. So then I went into infrastructure, adminning minis for the hospital up there. And then moved from there
Minis?
to minis, yeah.
The young'uns are not going to have a clue what that means. What's he
I'll
talking
assume
about?
a car,
Is he
right?
talking about
Yeah.
cars?
This is awesome. These are the thing that I learned, cut my teeth on, was something called an ads mentor,
Okay, no.
which is a very tall box that you could literally pull apart and put back together like Lego.
Wow, that's cool.
And that ran all of the hospital systems and other financial systems and so on at the time.
What was it called again?
Ads mentor.
Sounds like a Doctor Who villain. Interesting.
Looked like a Doctor Who villain. Yeah, it was an animal. So yeah, the rest after that is history. I spent some time working at Deloitte's. Lots of time in ops, IT ops, and infrastructure, and then finally in the last sort of 4 or 5 years into cloud. And what interests me now is the way that technology is so pervasive and the sheer impact that it has on us without us really even knowing.
It's when you say the cloud, I'm from the consumer or the product side of the cloud. The thing that you touch and use, are you still focused on the use of, I hate this phrase, that IaaS or whatever it is, infrastructure or as a service? Is that your focus still, or have you moved to, well, I'll shut up and let you answer the question.
I think we've moved past it. I hope we have. Yeah, exactly. Cloud is just simply a different delivery mechanism for IT. It's very simple. Rather than us buying stuff, we just now rent it. And we can literally rent it by the second if we want to. And yep, there's standards and IaaS and PaaS and this and that and DAS and everything else. But the bottom line is basically, rather than you investing in a heavy infrastructure set of things and physical boxes and all of the things that you need to manage that, you buy it as a service. You put your credit card in and off you go.
I giggled. I hope we moved on or whatever, and you and I know that's not the case. What's the phrase? Dinosaur IT.
Dinosaur IT.
Is a
The
classic.
server box guys.
The box huggers.
Yeah.
The ones that
yeah.
need to touch
Still
the
dealing
metal.
with some of them right
Yeah.
now.
Yes.
They can't let go.
Is
Right.
no. Well, I don't know. Can they let go? What is it? Why
They're
haven't
just so
they?
used to what they do. They don't, you assume they want to learn more because that's in the game that they're in, right? They like to have the boxes still.
I think what we're seeing is the death of IT. In the next sort of 5 to 10 years, IT will be dead. And even the phrase information technology is likely just to not be used. technology in the next sort of decade will reach a point where it's just life. You know, we won't talk about furniture. We don't talk about furniture now in terms of I buy chairs and I buy tables and this is the best table and so on and so forth. They just kind of exist. So IT in itself is vanishing, and these guys are holding on to it. And it definitely is going to impact their jobs. There's absolutely, there's no denying it. What they have to do is embrace it.
Is it like, you know, we talk about the IT department or whatever they're called now, but generally most people have it. They call them IT department. Will that have the same reaction in people's minds when we say the typing pool?
Yes.
It'll be like, oh yeah, God.
I remember when you had one of those.
You know what it is.
Yeah.
You've never possibly actually seen one, apart from old pictures. Is that?
Yeah, I think so. And if you go back with the typing pool, you had the telephonists who were in charge of everything, and they used to have these massive boards where they would stick wires in to connect calls and so on and so forth. So yeah, there's a degree of automation that just makes it go away. But what Dinosaur IT is trying to control that and own it, and the dinosaurs call it shadow IT, as if it were a bad thing. And the thing that I've been thinking about is shadow IT a good thing or a bad thing? And I'm starting to think it's a good thing. So the old dinosaur model is IT controls everything. If you want to get another piece of software or buy a phone or get a laptop, then you have to go through the IT department and justify it. And they all sit around and sort of pull their beards and give you reasons why you can't do it. And what we're seeing with cloud is that organisations can just go out and buy cloud services, whether it's payroll or websites or surveys or whatever it is. And IT is sort of fighting against that and saying it's a bad thing. Well, I don't think it is.
Well, it enables more people to get on with stuff.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I quite like that aspect of it. The poor dinosaurs, you know, they're still trying to justify. Actually, you need Exchange server in a box in a corner.
Yeah.
Why is that? Oh, because it just works better, or whatever the excuse is.
Yeah.
So you can just log in and do it, right? Oh, yeah, no, not really. I get conflicting arguments, even at the place I'm advising at the moment. They're all sort of arguing. So wait a minute, is that how it works? No, it's not. Yes, it is. No, it's not. You can argue this, you know, for people who are just really hanging on to those boxes.
The natural, I suppose, evolution of that is you just have your own IT.
Yep.
You just have your thing.
Yeah, it's not.
Now,
even
not
IT.
everyone does that, but
It's not IT anymore.
Yeah.
It's just
It's the login, really.
email
a
or
laptop, and I just and so consultants and small startups. This is just the way it is. It's just bring your laptop. I know of very few startups that say we will give you a laptop. It's like, well, no, you bring your laptop. We'll give you a login to whatever thing we've got that gets you your mail and your docs, you know, whatever it is. You bring your stuff, and if you don't have stuff, you probably shouldn't be here. Very tech startup.
Yeah, you
orientated,
probably
of
would
course.
have your stuff. You would have stuff if you're in the tech game. You'd have something, right?
However, that's all fantastic and glorious and wonderful. Pick a large organisation. Fonterra say, right, Ian, we're going to go for that. We're going to do that. We're going to shift all our bits and bobs onto the cloud and service, and when we hire people, they'll bring their own laptops and stuff. Go back to I saw you on that security at NetHui, which talks, of course, it talks about Snowden and everything's being collected and spied on. How does that play into that now?
The NetHui panel, for context, was about the government passing the Telecommunications Intercept Bill at the time and another set of legislation, which, again, in my opinion, then and now, was dinosaur-like. It was old before it was even born.
It was born, yeah.
And so the debate was around privacy. So security in IT is interesting. IT gets lumbered with having to fix security, but the reality is the organisation needs to decide what it is that it wants in terms of privacy. So if you take that and then you apply that to cloud, let's say the Frontier model, it's all risk-based. So let's say that the organisation says it's too risky to have information in the cloud because it's insecure. This is something I hear all the time. The reality is that it's actually safer to have your information in an accredited cloud provider than it is doing it yourself. So if I am Fonterra and I run all of my own IT, I don't know if they do or don't, and everybody knows where I am on the internet. I have an IP address. Anyone who wants to take that intellectual property can find me very, very quickly. If my data is spread into cloud services, then it's kind of the equivalent of trying to break into Fonterra. If Fonterra lived in a apartment block with 1.5 million apartments, security guards everywhere and so on and so forth. And if you want a good example of people who think it's a good idea, then the Department of Defense in the US in the last month or so has basically said we're going to put all of our stuff in the cloud, and one of the reasons that we're going to do that is because it's more secure than us trying to do it. So the trick with cloud risk is not having a one-sided argument that says it's more risky because I read something somewhere by a Luddite who told me it's too risky. The answer is, if I buy that cloud service, how much risk is involved? And if I keep doing it the way that I am internally, how much risk is involved? And I guarantee that 99 times out of 100, cloud's going to be better.
Cool. This is all golden stuff. I'm going to fling this at people soon before I even release the podcast. I'll be emailing it to people going, hey, listen to this. Stop hugging that box.
Box huggers love them, mate. So there was cloud, smart city. Is that a thing that you still talk about? Not really. Is that fair? It's faded away because Wellington itself just didn't. Is that true?
Yeah, a little bit. So at the moment, there's a lot of engagement going on with Wellington City Council, whether they...
We'll talk about that in a minute, don't worry.
Smart cities, pretty much. Smart cities are... they're a complex creature, but basically it's about taking a city and saying, how do I make it better? Doesn't necessarily have to be technically based. It could just be things like Wellington's Bond Street pop-up.
Oh yeah.
Point of difference.
Yeah.
And so on and so forth. So yeah, I'm doing a huge amount of work in that space, pushing it, and still talking about it to local government. But I'm just slightly consumed by some other writing topics.
Okay, so let's talk about that at the moment. So this is the probably came November, just been going for a number of months now.
Yeah.
Been growing, to be fair. And you've certainly taken on the mantle of Project Odyssey, which I was told was not the official name, and they tried to drop it, but we've all given it back to them as a little present. Project Odyssey, which has a number of guises within Wellington City Council. It's aimed at trying to take 120 internal systems to rationalise those, which save money. Lots of reasons why they think it will happen. You then did some background reading, some research on publicly available documents, and went, hang on. And your hang on was, it's not going to cost you 10 million to do what you just said you're going to do.
Yeah, pretty much. So Project Odyssey's been around for 18 months or more, probably a bit longer.
Yeah.
Wellington City Council went out to tender to replace 120 to 170 IT systems, depending on who you talk to and which documents you read. What kicked it off for me in terms of hang on a second was in January, when all of the councillors were on holiday and the rest of us were on holiday, they came out and said, we've been through the tender process and we're giving it all to a single Australian company. So I went, well, the council on one hand is saying that Wellington is a high-tech capital. They have their own website for that. They're pouring money into trying to foster that digital and creative part of the city. They talk hugely about supporting local business, and all of a sudden we've gone and we've given this away to an Australian company. The company's actually irrelevant. So
I heard they're getting premises here. They're buying or releasing a big building in Wellington. I saw that on the news yesterday. I can't remember the name of the firm, but yeah, they're releasing a building because of all the work they're going to have to do, right? Whereas they could have just sourced it here, right? Just saying.
All those people in buildings.
So if we look at it factually, then the facts that the council have told us is that to replace more than 100 computer systems will cost no more than $10 million. And this is despite the fact that anyone in IT understands that replacing even a website in an organisation that size, which council did 2 years ago,
$2.5 million?
cost them $2.5 million. That's one system.
Yeah.
It's a publishing system. Granted, it's complicated. So that doesn't ring true. Something kind of smells about that. And the second thing that the council is saying is that there's no one in Wellington, there's no IT company in Wellington, there's no IT company in New Zealand that fits the requirements for replacing these computer systems, and that just simply is nonsense.
Absolutely.
Doesn't make sense at all.
And so you're going back to the 13-year-old who went, well, that's not true. I'm going to write a letter. And you write a letter, of course you're going to post, and you're on Twitter, and you went, pfft. I looked at this, I went, pfft. And have had a lot of, good on you, buddy. Keep going, and more information comes, and following it up. Is it, the phrase I've heard is this a crusade, or is this just, this is what you do, because you do writing?
I think crusade's the wrong word. I love writing, and that just the mechanics and the nature of it is definitely that aspect. I certainly like a byline, there's no doubt about that, most writers do. I don't pretend to be a journalist because I'm not. I don't like the word blogger. But the bottom line is that it's more about, for me, it's about transparency. The city and that construct, that machine, is our employee. It's not the other way around. So when the city starts to give out confusing signals and shut you down and question whether you're right or wrong and refuse to release information and deliberately, in my opinion, cover it up, then we should just ask more questions.
I think that's what they don't like about it. Keep asking them questions.
I don't know if they like it or not. But yeah, so there's the writing and there's the love of the city. Those two come together to go, hang on, the way I'm going to express my, I love this city, this is not right, I'm going to write. Fantastic. On that note,
We need more people to do that.
on that note, we're going to say thank you. Where can people find all this writing?
So there's two blogs that I write, even
You're
though
not
I'm not a blogger. There's two blogging platforms.
Sites that I write on.
Yeah. I harpooned myself there. The industry side of it is whatisitwellington.com, and then the local politics that's very much related to Wellington itself is strathmorepark.org.
And one is the local politics, the city politics, not just Strathmore, Peninsula. And the other one is more global tech type news. Yeah, fair enough. Also, Twitter. It's fair to say you've got one or two followers on Twitter.
At Ian Apperley, yeah. I don't know how I ended up with
that many.
I know, it's quite a lot.
Maybe, I'm just throwing it out that people are interested in what you've got to say.
There is that possibility.
There is
it
that.
always surprises me.
Yeah.
Jeez, I hadn't thought about that.
Yeah,
Good Lord.
that's what that number's all about.
Oh my God. Wow. Well, it could be that, I suppose, yeah. How fascinating.
You never know,
And the other
not
thing,
all robots.
the final thing, and this is me prompting you subtly about how else do I know you? Ian, in Miramar. What else
of course,
are you pushing?
Gee, I wonder what he's talking about.
So the other way to influence government, or just to ignore them altogether, is the idea of the hackathons.
Yes.
Yeah. So we've run one hackathon.
We've done one event. We've done 2 events. About to do a third. Our code.
And the third one is very much about how is it that the community engages with itself, local government, central government, and companies, which is an important thing. And we're starting to see some technology-based stuff to this around neighbourly, connecting people together. But the challenge is, how do you get a community to engage with government and talk to itself?
Yep. So we got that event coming up on the 7th and 8th of March. It's 4 weeks from today of when we're talking. It's 2 weeks when you're going to hear this. So by then we'll be squeaky, as in, oh God, it's so close. hackmiramar.org will get you there, but also .co.nz, and I can't remember which one's the canonical one to use, but both of those will get you to that place.
Yeah, either or.
If you type that into Google, something will pop up.
That's right.
There you go. Yeah.
And you're going to hear much more from Ian around all of those subjects. If you're here listening to Access Granted because of the tech, then if you're not subscribed to Ian's podcast and or following him on his Twitter feed where he puts up an awful retweets or reshares an awful lot of tech news, then you're missing out and you should be following him.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much, guys. Thank you, Ian.
Appreciate your time, Ian. Thanks a lot. Great interview with Ian, discussing server huggers, cloud, the death of IT, which I quite like that phrase. You can find more about him online, of course. And what I really like is his passion for the city. Wellington really wants to see it do well and grow digitally in the future. And he also asks the questions that many of us don't. It's really amazing.
As always, don't take our jibber jabber for all the news and gossip, and listen to the people in our interviews. They are the gold. But also follow us on #me.co.nz.
And on all the social networks, look for the podcast on Twitter, Facebook and Google+, or chat with myself at NZRaj or
Mike, me at Miramar Mike.
And if you're desperate to email us, you know what it is by now, access granted at #me.co.nz. And for all the other hashtag goodness, such as the updates, prizes, news, and much, much more, go to the #me.co.nz website.
Thanks for your time. See you next Tuesday with the Kiwi Tech people sharing their own stories. Ka kite anō.
#me.co.nz